Well guys, welcome to Waynosfotos video, and if you saw my last video, we were talking about Back to the Future, and there was one of these pros who was using a piece of electrical tape across his chainstay and also the forks at the front to rub debris off his tires. Now, this is a really antique, old-fashioned trick that people used to use to keep the debris off their tires, and this pro brought it back. He was probably not even born when people were using this technology. Well, what is interesting is this whole Back to the Future thing seems to be happening with bottom brackets, and bottom brackets seem to be cycling back to what we had with the old steel frames. And the steel frames were wonderful because it was made out of a material, which is steel, that could be easily tapped, and you could put threads in and then they screwed into the frame. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, put your cranks in and away you go. So let's roll our intro and let's have a talk about how we've managed to getting that DeLorean and zoom back into the past once again. So what we're seeing now is that the manufacturers have kind of given in to the press fit bottom bracket, and they've gone back to threaded bottom brackets like the BSA. Now, what is really interesting to me is we've heard over all of these, probably over the last maybe 15 to 20 years, how we're moving to press fits. Press fits are better. We can make it stiffer because we can widen the press fit. You don't have to screw threads, blah, 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 blah. It's a better system. And not only did they go to a press fit, they made all of these different designs under the sun. So there were so many bottom bracket standards, it was like insane. Well, eventually what they had happen is we've had so many problems with creaking bottom brackets, and the quality control of the manufacturers making these bottom brackets, because of the nature of carbon, is a bit more difficult. They haven't been able to keep the quality control within the tolerances, or they don't want to keep it within the tolerances. They don't want to put the effort in to keep it within the tolerances. So unfortunately, a percentage of people are going to get bottom brackets that don't work properly because they're too loose. And we're going to get creaking, or they're out of alignment, so you get accelerated wear. But now what we've got is they're going back to threaded bottom brackets. Now, you can't tap carbon. You can't get a thread cutter and cut. Well, you can if you made a really coarse thread, but that would have its disadvantage. Well, the material would have to be quite thick and so forth. But so they're not going that way. But what they're doing is they're bonding an insert into the bottom bracket, so you've got this threaded section that you can thread in to put your cranks in. All good and well. But the issue with that is once you put in a metal, especially like aluminium, because you want it to be light, being a push bike, is that aluminium is at the opposite end of the periodic scale. They're like one's up here, one's down here. And carbon and aluminium create electrolysis, and that creates corrosion. So you've got to keep them apart. You've got to keep them separated. Now, the way they do that in push bikes is putting in a layer of fiberglass. So it's basically putting a piece of glass in between the two materials, so then you can't get that corrosive action happening. But as we've seen with a number of push bikes, looking at drink mount holders and mounts for your front derailleur, is that sometimes when they put that fiberglass in, they just can't get it in the right spot. So they partially cover the interface between the aluminium and the carbon, or they don't at all. And this is what we need to worry about when we're buying these new bikes that have got these inserts in them, these aluminium inserts. Have they put the fiberglass in? Because if they haven't, what we're going to see is increased corrosion, and especially if you ride the bike in poor conditions like you do in some of the northern hemisphere, countries where you sort of can't avoid the weather, you're going to get accelerated corrosion if they haven't made this bike correctly by putting the fiberglass in there in the right spot. So this is going to be another issue we're going to have into the future. And what's even more concerning is now that they're modifying this threaded bottom bracket, they want to make it wider. They want to get back to a wider bottom bracket because they want to be able to make that stiffer and provide that same feature they had with the press fits. But that now means we have more and more standards coming out. So it really perplexes me that we continually get this argument that we're going to have better technology all the time. And we actually have two incidents in very close timing where we've seen that the bicycle industry or people using these bikes at a very high level are going back to some older technology. And this is a bit concerning because you hear this all the time. You go, oh, you old buggers like me here, you stuck with your tubeless, you're stuck with your rim brakes. Stop living in the past, come to the future. It's all better. Everything's better now. Well, these examples show that that's not the case. The bike industry is not as clever as they think they are. They're not having these revolutionary designs that are really sticking and staying in the industry. They persevere with them, and then they get to a point where they drop them because they just can't fine-tune them or get them to work consistently. Anyway, guys, leave your comments down below. What do you think about this switcheroo going back to threaded bottom brackets and now actually trying to modify them so they can go to a wider frame, and putting these inserts in there and the way that they need to put the fiberglass in there? What do you think about all that stuff? Do you think the bicycle industry can be trusted to do this correctly? Let me know. Anyway, guys, that's where I'm going to leave it, and I will see you next vid.